In late 2025, Japan's prime minister stood before the National Diet and made a declaration that recalibrated the security of East Asia. If China were to initiate an armed blockade or invasion of Taiwan, the Japanese government would consider it a survival-threatening situation. That phrasing directly challenges the legal foundation of post-war Japan. Under Article 9 of the National Constitution, the Japanese people explicitly and forever renounced war as a sovereign right of the nation. For 80 years, that single article limited modern Japan's military to a purely defensive entity, the Self-Defense Forces. Their mandate restricted them to fighting only if Japanese home territory came under direct hostile attack first. By publicly declaring a willingness to intervene over a neighboring island, Tokyo is breaking an 80-year political taboo. It signals that the security architecture built after 1945 is effectively collapsing. Japan anchors the first island chain, stretching from its mainland through Taiwan to the Philippines. This barricade boxes the Chinese Navy into shallow coastal waters. But this geography creates a vulnerability. Nearly 90% of Japan's energy imports transit directly past Taiwan. If Beijing takes control of Taiwan, they break the island chain. The Chinese military would gain the power to sever these sea lines, imposing an economic blockade that could cause strategic paralysis in Japan within weeks. For Tokyo, Taiwan is a geographic imperative for survival. The fear of a blockade is compounding with intense regional friction. Between 2013 and 2022, China expanded its military spending by over 60%, using that new power to send Coast Guard vessels into territorial waters around the Senkaku Islands, uninhabited rocks administered by Japan but claimed by Beijing. To the west, a North Korean military has repeatedly tested ballistic missiles by firing them over Japanese airspace, demonstrating the range and payload to strike the Japanese home islands at will. Beyond the region, Russia's invasion of Ukraine proved that large-scale wars of conquest are not relics of the past. Simultaneously, shifting politics in the United States have raised doubts in Tokyo about the long-term reliability of the American security umbrella. Facing 3 nuclear-armed neighbors and a wavering ally, the Japanese government has decided it can no longer safely outsource its defense to Washington. It is building an independent deterrent. This deterrent is backed by a massive financial commitment. Japan is doubling its annual defense budget to roughly $80 billion, placing its spending on the same level as the United Kingdom or Saudi Arabia. A major portion of that funding is going towards counterstrike capability. Japan is purchasing 400 Tomahawk cruise missiles, giving their military the ability to accurately strike targets thousands of kilometers away, deep within the Chinese mainland. At sea, they are rapidly retrofitting their 2 massive Izumo-class helicopter carriers. When completed, these ships will be capable of launching F-35B stealth fighters, serving as Japan's first active fixed-wing aircraft carriers since the Imperial Navy of the 1940s. These assets are moving south. Japan is turning the Ryukyu Islands into heavily armed outposts, deploying electronic warfare units and long-range anti-ship missile batteries to locations like Yanaguni and Ishigaki, directly facing the Taiwan Strait. With these island fortresses, Japan has transitioned from a passive home defense force into a power-projecting military, entrenched directly on China's maritime flank. This rearmament carries a heavy psychological cost for the people living on these islands. For many Okinawans, the arrival of missile batteries and forward operating bases suggests their homes are being turned into the primary targets of a new war. That fear is rooted in the soil. During the Battle of Okinawa in 1945, a quarter of the island's civilian population was killed, as the Japanese military used the island as a final wall against the American advance. Today, construction crews still regularly uncover unexploded ordnance and the remains of the dead. Across the East China Sea, this buildup touches a different historical nerve. For 50 years, Imperial Japan inflicted immense suffering on the Chinese people through massacres, biological experimentation, and brutal occupation. In Beijing, Japan's military expansion is viewed as a hostile return to the imperialism that drove China's century of humiliation. This history shapes modern Chinese nationalism, framing Tokyo's defensive measures as a revival of past aggression. In East Asia, modern strategy is inextricably tied to the past. What Tokyo views as an essential measure for survival, Beijing views as an escalation of unfinished history. This creates a classic security dilemma. Every anti-ship missile Japan deploys to secure the Ryukyu Islands gives China the justification to further expand its own arsenal. Each side's attempt to deter the other only tightens the regional tension. Japan has abandoned 80 years of pacifism to stop a war from reaching its shores. But in a region defined by this much historical trauma, the sheer scale of their preparation might be the exact spark that ignites one.